Have you ever just stopped and thought about it? What's it really like to learn a new language from absolute zero? I mean, not even knowing the alphabet. Today, we're going to unpack that incredible journey from total silence to having your first real conversation by looking at exactly how teachers build a language from the ground.
Right, so here's the big puzzle. How on earth do you teach a language when you don't share a language? Just imagine, you can't explain grammar, you can't translate a single word, you can't even say, "open your book," and be understood. The whole approach has to be built from scratch, focusing on what works, not just theory. So the goal here, it's not about being perfect. Nope, it's all about what educators call survival English. This is designed to give a learner the tools they need to function right away. You know, to order a coffee, ask for a price, introduce themselves. It's all about communication, not getting bogged down in perfect conjugation.
Okay, so where does this journey from zero actually begin? You might be surprised. Before a single word is even taught, the instructor has to deal with the biggest hurdle of all, fear. This first stage is way more about psychology than it is about language.
Yeah, there's this key concept called the affective filter. The best way to picture it is like a wall of anxiety that just shoots up when a learner feels stressed or is afraid of making a mistake. So the teacher's number one job, it's to tear down that wall, to create a safe space where it's totally okay to try and fail.
And how do they do that? Well, they've got this awesome toolkit of proven methods. First up, there's PPP, presentation, practice, production, which gives lessons a really nice, predictable rhythm. Then you have TPR, or total physical response, which is just brilliant. It connects words to actions. The teacher says stand up, and then they stand up. The student gets it through action, way before they can actually speak the words. And for learners who don't know the Roman alphabet, the LSCW method is an absolute lifesaver. Okay, so once that psychological groundwork is laid and the fear is down, it's time. Time for the first real words. And that first big win for any new learner is being able to answer that most basic, most human question, who are you? And this is where that PPP model we mentioned just clicks into place. First, the teacher presents the phrase, pointing to themselves and saying, "My name is Alex." Simple. Then, the class practices it together, repeating it over and over. And finally, the production stage, which is the fun part. Students actually get up, walk around, and use the language to introduce themselves to each other. They're doing it.
And look at this. The key thing here is that by learning just a handful of these phrases, a student goes from being a silent observer to someone who can actually start a conversation. Within that very first lesson, they have the keys to make a basic human connection. That's huge.
All right, so from that first connection, the survival toolkit just keeps getting bigger. The next few lessons are all about adding those super practical tools you need to get by, like numbers. You need them for phone numbers, for addresses, for prices, basically for everything.
But you know, even something as simple as numbers has these little traps waiting for you. A classic one, the difference between 13 and 30. It's literally just about where you put the stress. Getting that difference down early, 13 versus 30, saves a world of confusion later on.
And once you've got a handle on numbers, bam, you unlock one of the most powerful survival questions there is. How much is it? Seriously, that one little phrase opens up the entire world of commerce, from buying groceries to hopping on a bus.
And this is the payoff. This is where you see it all come together. The learner uses hello, they ask how much is the milk, and then they use their numbers and some politeness with, "Can I have 2, please?" All those simple bits and pieces combine into a real, successful transaction. That is a massive confidence booster.
So, with those survival basics under their belt, it's time to level up. The next challenge is cracking some of the trickier parts of English. You know, the stuff that can really trip off a beginner.
Let's talk about the L and R sounds. Oh man, for so many learners, these are just brutal. And what's wild is that teaching this is all about physical training. It's pure muscle memory. For the L sound, your tongue has to touch that ridge right behind your teeth. But for R, it pulls back and doesn't touch anything at all. It's basically linguistic gymnastics.
And it's the exact same story for that infamous TH sound. It just doesn't exist in a ton of languages. So, what's the hack? It's simple. A mirror. Learners literally watch their own mouths to make sure their tongue is peeking out just a little bit between their teeth. You have to see it to get it right.
And then, of course, there's grammar. But instead of throwing complicated rule books at people, teachers use these great little analogies. So the present simple, that just becomes the everyday tense for your habits, for facts, for things that are always true. And the present continuous? That's the now tense, for what's happening this very second. It makes something super abstract feel concrete and, more importantly, totally usable.
Okay, so at this point, our learner has words, they've got numbers, and they've got some pronunciation tools. This is the final stage of this first big journey, putting it all together to gain some real autonomy.
And this is what I call the language of freedom. When you can ask a single ticket to please, it means you can explore, you can get to that job interview, you can move through your new city all by yourself. These little phrases are just incredibly empowering.
You know, sometimes survival English is really about navigating cultural quirks. Take a simple date on a form. In the US, 02/20 is February 20th, but in a lot of other places, that's the 20th of February. Knowing the local convention is the difference between making your appointment and missing it by a mile.
And that right there really brings it all home. This whole process, from that very first hello all the way to buying a train ticket, it isn't just about memorizing words from a list. It's about empowerment. It's about giving a person the tools to speak, to act, and to truly be a part of a new linguistic world.
So that leaves us with one last question, and this one's for you. If you were dropped into a new country tomorrow with absolutely zero language skills, what's the one survival phrase you would absolutely need to know first? Seriously, think about it. Your answer probably reveals what matters most to you.